Hello, and welcome to another update video about Bitcoin. Bitcoin hasn't really moved since yesterday's update. We want to talk about Bitcoin in the current range here. Seems to be constrained within some kind of a triangle at the moment, just above support, just below resistance, and doesn't seem to want to move down further. So decision point here on the Bitcoin chart, the comments basically from yesterday's video still remain. And the larger time frame hasn't changed at all. In yesterday's videos, we talked about the daily time frame. Feel free to check that out if you are after a little bit more context. Also in the long-term video playlist, we have our daily and video weekly charts for Bitcoin. So you can check that out to get an idea of the larger context. But in this video, I just want to focus on the smaller time frame, because this is where we will get some clues about where Bitcoin might be heading. And we're dealing here with unreliable micro action, and I know a lot of people are annoyed by the microstructure because Bitcoin is just not doing anything. It's just moving sideways. Yesterday, around this time, we did sit here and we said that Bitcoin has a good chance to move down lower in the preferred yellow wave count. That would be the forecast against resistance. So again, this resistance area, or you could say short trade area, generated a potentially profitable trade for anybody who used it to position themselves. However, hasn't followed through yet really aggressively to the downside. That's what we observed last week already, that the bears are just not strong enough to really follow through. Okay, so this is now all about, okay, can they follow through? And what do we need to see for a bearish follow through? Well, ideally in the preferred option, that would be the clearest microstructure. The price should stay below yesterday's high, and that is at 27,750, 27,760. The price should stay below it to form this fifth wave of the first wave in the yellow wave count, because then we would get an impulsive move down in 5 waves. Then we can look forward to a 3-wave move up, and that would then be just a corrective counter trend move, and that is when the party will start with a third wave breakdown. Critical support levels here, $27,200 and $27,000. It looks as if we're testing that level though, and if Bitcoin breaks above that level, it just means more choppy price action. Not necessarily bullish, but certainly less bearish. Okay, and then if we take a look at the clues that both Ether and Bitcoin charts are giving us, I mean, Ether, for example, yeah, much more bearish than Bitcoin at the moment, at least, and followed through nicely on the yellow wave count. Bitcoin is sort of still stuck up there and doesn't really want to come down. I mean, they are signs that we might just be stuck here for a little while, or maybe the bulls will take the lead, but we just cannot confirm that until the price is above 28,300. So we just do what we talked about yesterday, right? And we focus on the yellow wave count as long as we stay below $28,300. Funny enough, we said yesterday that also in the white wave count, which is the alternative bullish one, which will come into effect above 28,300 and which can take us to 30K. Even in this wave count, we were looking at potentially more downside yesterday to form here basically a C wave of wave 4, because the idea would be that this was an A wave, a B wave, and the C wave. Ideally, even in the C wave, we see another low. Now, okay, if we break above yesterday's high, would it invalidate another low? No, of course not. It would just make it less clear, a bit more ambiguous, you know, and we would probably move from what could become an impulse to a diagonal, which is not a disaster, but yeah, I just need to be aware of that. What I'm watching for here is potentially a head and shoulders pattern in this range, which ideally would break to the downside, yeah, and that could be basically our third wave. But ultimately, we need to be watching the $28,300 level, and my view is that against that level, I focus on lower. Give it a little bit of space, you know, this is still a very choppy price range, but the situation isn't as clear as on the ETH chart, okay? Not as clear, and the yellow wave count is not clearly in control. It will get in control if we get that one more low, then we have 5 waves down, and then 3 waves up. Then we have a 1-2 setup, and the party can start to the downside in a third wave breakdown. It would actually be a third of a third wave, yeah, and that is typically very aggressive to the downside. But yeah, Bitcoin seems to like it in the range. I mean, if it really forms a right shoulder, okay, and then we might call that the wave 4 here. If it's a diagonal, especially, it might even go a little higher and then make that complete that right shoulder. Then we might be in this range for a little longer. Yeah, I know it's frustrating, but there's nothing we can do. We cannot move the market. We cannot will the market to do anything. But what we can do, we can try to identify the trend. And this is a critical turning point, a critical inflection point here, where probably Bitcoin's movement and Bitcoin's direction for the next few weeks and maybe months is going to be decided. So still a bit in no man's land here. And I think the levels are clear. There is not much more to add. Maybe we'll get a little bit more price action later today. The micro price action, I think, is sort of fairly clear. The resistances are holding at the moment. As I said, ideally we avoid a break above yesterday's high. We just need to see if Bitcoin is following through, but be aware that this is just a range. So there can be a lot of choppy price action. And that's my update. I hope you liked the update. If you did, please hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe. And if you really like the content, then please check out the channel membership. Also, last week we launched our stocks and S&P 500 service. If you're interested in daily updates about the S&P, which is, by the way, at an absolute critical inflection point as well, could be putting in a lasting low. Now, what all that means and where we could be going with the S&P, we talk about that on a daily basis in that stocks and S&P service. So yeah, you can find the link in the description. And have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.